welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm so excited to have Margo Fragola with us here today. Margo, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Beth. I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
It's so good to have you. I was trying to do the Italian pronunciation of your last name, but it's okay. All we know is strawberries, right?
hmm
Yeah, the heart medicine.
Yeah.
So Margo was a former group mastermind client of mine. We just determined, I was like, when was that? It feels like yesterday, but it was 2 years ago. So I love this because we're doing, this is like a follow-up check-in. I've been, of course, following you and watching you, and just so excited and proud to see where you've come from since the program. So let me tell people a little bit about you. Margo is an Earth Reconnection Facilitator, helping you to transform your paradigm and unearth your true, authentic nature to heal your life, expand your spiritual connection, and come into right relationship with the Earth. A lifetime of spiritual starvation initiated Margo on a deep journey healing from addiction, chronic depression, and chronic illness beginning in 2017 by turning to therapeutic work with plant medicine and ancient spiritual traditions. She found that the root of her own suffering was interwoven with the root of the environmental crisis, that the majority of Western society lives in a paradigm of disconnection and separation from the earth, from our true authentic nature, and from the sacredness of our lives. Holding certifications in somatic plant medicine integration, transformational addiction recovery coaching, essentials of IFS, masters in environmental sustainability, and her own deep work of dieting Amazonian master plants, master teacher plants, and working with sacred plant medicines, Margo interweaves somatic exploration, parts work, plant medicine allyship, and shamanic energetics in one-on-one offerings, self-guided courses, and virtual and in-person gatherings. And you can check out her work right here in the show notes. Margo, it's so funny. I think I've reached out to you like 200 times for this interview.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, when you first came to the mastermind, I remember you were, walking the medicine path, and I think you went on a dieta when the program, which is not an uncommon thing. But I remember originally, you were talking about doing work around, like grief and on our planet, planetary grief and environmental grief, and these big changes that are happening on Earth. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to need this so much more. I mean, it's already very big right now. Like if no one feels it, I don't know where they've been.
Yeah.
And you've come up so many times where I'm like, wow, this is going to be big. I actually think this is going to be, I think, work around, the world, the earth, the environment, and like deep inner grief and our loss of this connection is really where the future is. I mean, it's already here in a lot of our work, but so I'm so glad you trusted in the mastermind program and me to guide you in this journey. But yeah, tell me a little bit about what got you onto this path of exploring this connection with Earth, and then, even doing environmental work, and then the medicine path. What brought you here?
Yeah. So it's so funny because I was thinking back and I was like, before I met you, I had no idea that I was trying to start a business. Like that was not in my mind at all. I was really in the couple years prior to meeting you and to you coming into looking outside of myself, trying to find, someone working in the intersection of plant medicine or psychedelics and ecological healing. And it kind of, because my journey, I realized like this thread that had always been pulling me through every part of my life, every phase and every challenge was always the environment. It led me through a 5-year opiate addiction where I was getting my bachelor's degree in environmental sciences while going through an addiction. And then 4 years of subsequent, cocaine and alcohol abuse. And at the end of that, kind of like, oh my gosh, like I hate my life. I'm so sick. And so I decided to go get my master's in environmental sustainability. So again, the earth just like continuing to pull me through. And that was when I really, started uncovering, like, I think a catalyst that, my catalyst into the healing realm and into my healing journey is the same as many people. Like physical ailment really starts with the physical body being sick and trying to figure out what's going on, and then recognizing that there was more than just the physical. So I started doing therapy, and that led me into just a deep process of uncovering like deep depression, chronic depression that had been my whole life. And I was about, I was in therapy at the time, thankfully. This was like 2020. I went through a really hard breakup. And I realized that, well, let me back up a little bit. So, one particular day, I was like really going through it. I asked my boyfriend at the time to like take me to a mental institution, and I tried to go, we went to the place and I was like, I can't go in there. That place is so scary. It looked like a prison. So I finally called my therapist. I said, hey, okay, I need to just get on antidepressants. So I left a voicemail for their psychiatrist. And that night, something sparked in me to watch the movie Fantastic Fungi. A friend of mine had told me to watch it. And so that next day, I was thinking I'd watch this movie and I was like, okay, this is kind of inspiring. The next day I was thinking I was going to get in touch with the psychiatrist. And instead, a friend texted me totally out of the blue saying, hey, I'm getting some mushrooms. Do you want some? And it felt like she didn't know what was happening in my world. And it just felt like this sign. I was like, okay, there is hope. And so a month later, I started my first microdosing protocol with psilocybin. And I had the greatest relief from my depression that I'd ever felt in my entire life. And at that same time, it was like the medicine was opening up all these like sparks of creativity of, wow, like this deep connection between our personal illness and like, mental illness, physical illness and dis-ease, and how that was connected to the ecological crisis that we were experiencing. So, in all that process of like then trying to kind of make this connection, when you came into my world, I realized like what I was seeking was not outside of myself. It was something I had to create, which is working in this intersection of ecological healing, personal well-being, and plant medicine and psychedelics.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing so vulnerably. I mean, I know I've been there. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who've been there where we just, it's like we lose all hope and hit rock bottom, and there's that desperation point, and then, wow, all the synchronicities. I want to talk about this because it's, this kind of ecological piece of it, which I've heard some people talking about. I mean, it's come up a lot, it's like Joanna Macy's work and people that are kind of the leaders in this. And I've interviewed Rakrazam, who's talked about this interconnection of, the ecological issues and psychedelics, and how there is a connection. I mean, these are earth medicines that are coming from her. Hopefully, people see it this way, but with a message. There's like, hello, wake up. And, over the years, I think all of us, so many of us that are on this path, have realized that the earth is completely out of balance, and that people are out of balance. And these medicines bring us back to that deeper connection, this relationship. But how do you see this work? Like, how do you see this kind of this combining of earth-based work, and then let's say psychedelics, and then kind of integration and coaching and grief? Like, how do you see this, and how does it all tie in together to help people?
Yeah. It's definitely still something that I'm uncovering, right, as I go, evolving. But one, I guess spiritual tradition that really stuck with me, one of the first ones that I learned when I started, studying shamanism and shamanic practice, is the medicine wheel. And so I've kind of created a vision or a methodology, I guess, if you will, to work with the wheel as a way of coming back into balance. So it's, because the wheel shows us and points us to the sort of physical, the earth element, right? And so that physical component of like our bodies and the well-being of ourselves, and then connecting that in with the land. And so the wheel, goes through these different cycles of the earth. It goes through, the cycles of the year, and how these cycles correlate with our own lives and our own, experience, and the components that make up our being, which is, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So yeah, I think it's, it's really a process that is unfolding of, but like you said, just really coming back into balance. Like, the earth is so imbalanced. We are so imbalanced in the way that we're living our lives as, modern humans. And, that's not to say that like everything we're doing is wrong, right? It's like this process of evolution is all unfolding. But I think that when we keep coming back to the earth and recognizing the wisdom that is there, that is right in front of us, then, for me, at least in my own experience, it's like the thing that has been the most healing for me, the thing that has been the most, I guess my North Star, if you will, is like always turning back to the earth to learn from her through the plants, through, holistic health and, synchronizing with this, like with the seasons and with, circadian rhythm and things like that. So,
Yeah. And it's funny, it's become a major theme. This theme has come up so much in my life over the last like 6 to 8 months. It's come up in a training program I was in. It's come up in ceremonies. I was helping with this nonprofit, raising money to save this cacao temple, which was, just this notion of Aini and like in this right relationship and this balance, this reciprocity. And it's interesting because I know in my own experience too. I mean, I've definitely gone through these bouts of depression and anxiety and like just utter despair, And the one thing that I have come back to, especially since I left living in a major city and like live, what I would call like very connected to nature now, many years ago, it was like I just instantly felt better. Really being in a deeper relationship with the cycles of life, like with that kind of medicine wheel and the different archetypes of each direction in the medicine wheel, and turning to nature as a guide for life. And it is funny because, even during some of the biggest challenges I've had, and I've definitely had a lot, like a lot of us, right? Major breakups and illnesses and like dealing with a, mother who's declining and deep grief. It's like that feeling of like, okay, like I know I'm still supported. I know I have, I have the earth, I mean, I've told a bunch of people like in the last few months, I've had these moments where I was like, all I want to do is go lay down on the earth. And I actually did that. And I will tell my clients this, like, hey, if you are stuck on something or having a really bad week or a bad day, like just take yourself outside and lay a prayer and like get connected. It's like, I don't know. I think I always wonder like how do people deal with life? It's like, I don't know, maybe that's what's causing, the addictions or the, dependency on kind of habits that don't serve. I don't know. But yeah, what have you found that people are struggling with, and what are they coming to you for? Like, what is have you noticed themes over the last, few years that you've been doing this? Like, what's going on out there?
Yeah, there have been a lot of themes. And I think, when I first started this business, I was more focused on the addiction part of it, which is something that does keep coming up. People just moving through addiction. And I think that it seems to just kind of range anywhere from like people just being really curious about plant medicine and really wanting to know more about, my work with dietas that I've done personally in my own process. And also, I think people struggling for connection. And that's been, a big theme in my own process, is that I really struggled for a long time with connecting to other people. And for me, learning about, the shamanic practice or way or paradigm, I guess if you will, about being able to actually be in communication and in relationship with non-human beings, non-human entities, the earth, the plants, the animals. For me, that just always felt like the most accessible way for me to find connection and to find spiritual expansion. So yeah, I'd say, it's kind of all across the board. But one of the major themes that I picked up on is like people wanting community. And, for me, like in my own process, being like, yeah, I struggle with that too. And I think it always helps me to really ground and be like, okay, like no matter who is physically in my life or not, I am always held and always, connected to the earth. And I always have that relationship to turn to.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And, I just wonder, like, I've asked this for years on this podcast and my summits, like, what is wrong? Like, what is wrong out there? We do see so many people struggling with depression and anxiety and, dependencies on, substances that maybe don't support them. And then if it's not one of those, it's like glued to social media or distracted by just like noise or, like news or kind of content that's supposed to make people informed, but maybe makes things potentially worse. What do you think is happening? Like, kind of just even on a small scale, like the personal, like what's happening with people, and then also what is happening as a collective, and do you think there is this connection between the two?
Yeah, I think, for me, like working with plant medicine, going on dietas and working deeply with ayahuasca, and psilocybin as well. But what I really keep getting shown is that there is this massive process of evolution, which includes how we're interacting with technology and how, bridging that, finding that balance, finding that harmony between technology and the earth. Because, I think at many times, in my past of studying environmental sciences, sustainability, things like that, it's like it's very clear we can't really go back to what we were doing before. We have to find a way forward that can incorporate, a relationship between earth and technology. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I personally, it's like someone who runs a business with technology. I struggle with this. I
Mm-hmm.
just spoke to a friend about it last week, and she's like, I can't believe I created an online business and I don't even want to be online. And I said, like I sometimes go through that too. It's like I don't love being totally online all the time. And I really try to bring everything into balance. It's like, where is that point where I'm able to serve in a beautiful way, to work with people all over the world and, put this content out there. And, we have this amazing gift of the connection of the internet like never before. And we also have this, it's like a curse at the same time. And I do believe it's kind of coming back to that same theme of like, okay, well, where do we find that balance point? Where can we still be in relationship with the earth and ourselves and our hearts and our loved ones and like having real in-person connections with community, but also, still be able to have an online business or still use Zoom for good reasons or still listen to podcasts and watch YouTube. I mean, it's kind of like it's here, and it's funny. I don't know about you, but being on this medicine path, very often there's that feeling of like, oh my God, I just want to leave all of it. Like I have this vision all the time. I'm like, when can I just quit and go live on on a mountaintop and like disconnect from society altogether, And I think a lot of people have that. And of course, we're seeing people doing that. There's people doing that more and more. And the reality is, it's like, can we really run away? Like, is that running away? Is that creating a new earth? Is it people saying bye from an old paradigm, but then maybe also like, maybe they're not 100% serving if they're just pushing themselves away from everybody? What are your thoughts on all that? Because I know I've kind of gone back and forth with like, well, maybe that's not the best way to help this world by running away and hiding in your community on a mountaintop. But how do we come to terms with this?
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely had those visions myself, and I still do. I like pray that one day I'll have land, and
Yeah.
I grew up in a really rural town, so I'm not used to living in the city, but I have been for the past like 5 years. And what I've come to learn is, I mean, thankfully I live in a city that has quite a bit of open space, but at the same time, it's like nature is all around us. I mean, she is just alive everywhere. Like, you'll see the plants growing through the sidewalks, and birds, animals still just like finding a way. Life always finds a way through, everything that we try to kind of build on top of it. It always finds a way through. And and there's also this paradigm, this perspective that like we as humans are the earth. And so I think as much as we maybe want to isolate. You know, the world is big. It's a lot. There's a lot going on, and so many different people into so many different, you know, things. And yeah, but I think to find some sort of, you know, connection, some sort of thread between, like, yeah, how do we find this place of balance between feeling like we're being nourished on a soul level as humans and still engaging with the society that we live in and that we've built for ourselves. And for me, like, that's where this work that I've been doing really comes in, that, you know, I'm taking the time to go and pray to the land and, like, be, you know, make offerings. And, you know, I don't just go out when I'm outside walking, like, I'm not just out there recreating, like, I'm listening to the birds, I'm listening to the water, I'm really, like, allowing my senses to take in and to receive the medicine. And I think that we can do that really no matter where we are. You know, I have spent a lot of time, like, in downtown Denver, and I seem to always find a way to connect with the plants, like, even if they're growing in a pot, right? It's like, well, they're still alive. And yeah, just recognizing that it's always there. It's always there.
Oh, yeah, so beautiful. I know. I used to live in New York City, and it's like, okay, that one tree on the sidewalk. I mean, but it is always there. And, you know, even if people are living right in the heart of Manhattan with just tall buildings and barely any trees, I mean, you are still on the earth. And I think that's where so much of our society forgets this. You know, we just get caught up. You know, a lot of people are just moving so fast, and there's not any presence of, you know, where are you truly? Like, what is this all about? So I'm so glad you're doing this work. I want to, you know, ask a few questions about what you were up to before you came to the mastermind, and then what happened in your experience working with me and in this group, and, like, what do you believe also, like, is what's happening, you know, like, when you're going through this, like, okay, I'm making a commitment to giving this a go. You know, have you ever thought about, like, what is this all about? Like, it's not just like Beth is teaching you some strategies and that's that, but yeah, what are your views on, like, where you were when you started the mastermind, where you are now, and, like, what has happened since?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, it's like I didn't even know I was trying to start a business, but it's just been this deep calling. Like, there's just a deep vision that keeps coming through, that's been coming through. I mean, back in my early days of college, I wrote about the ecological crisis that we're facing, like, really requiring a massive paradigm shift. And for me, it was the medicines that actually gave me the experience of that paradigm shift, like during my first microdosing protocol with psilocybin. And I mean, well before that, because I'd worked with the I had been taking mushrooms, like, pretty young, but obviously not knowing what was going on. But I think that, like I said, you know, like, having those visions kind of, or that creative vision sparked inside of me with the microdosing, and then, like, that being right before meeting you, was kind of like, oh, there's a way to, like, really bring this calling to life, and create it into a something manifest. And yeah, I think it is so much about, you know, like you talk about all the time, it's like the soul is wanting to have some sort of experience here in this lifetime of, you know, and especially being someone who's so environmentally focused, and seeing all the things that have been unfolding through my life with the ecological challenges. It's like, how do we really reconcile this, and what needs to happen? Because, you know, I tried to go into a sustainability field, into, like, the environmental field and in the environmental industry, and just was not finding fulfillment in my soul. I mean, my soul was still calling for something much, much deeper than the band-aid of sustainability, which, you know, I still do sustainable practices and things like that, but I just always wanted to get deeper into the roots. And so that was kind of what led me on this journey. And like I said, you know, it's just been a calling. Yeah. So
Oh, I'm so glad you shared that, because you know, the more I've explored this myself and interviewed people and talked to others, there's more and more people saying that it's not going to be fixed with, actually, it was Rack who said, we're not going to be able to 3D print a glacier. Because I guess people were actually talking about doing that, like literally. Like these band-aids of like, well, maybe we can like create something and just stick it in the middle of the ocean or whatever. I don't know. But for years have actually just had this intuitive sense that it's gonna come from beyond that. It's like we have not just ecological, like, I mean, there's so many crises, and by the way, they all seem to be kind of coming to surface at once. Who knows, Kali Yuga, there's different theories about all this, but I do, when you say like paradigm shift, what do you either like imagine, or what have you been shown that is possible, even if it's like beyond our human comprehension, which sometimes that's what I've been shown, where I'm like, well, maybe it's beyond our comprehension, but possible. Like, what do you believe that is possible for our future as a planet?
It's such a big question because it's so hard to see beyond what we see right in front of us, and especially given the kind of Western culture of, you know, focusing on the material, like focusing and not really, and kind of ignoring the emotional and kind of ignoring the spiritual. Um, I think what I really see is just kind of this, I guess this kind of reconciling and coming back into awareness of all of that, like of, the spiritual and the emotional and the physical and kind of like the real. But we've given so much focus in this Western paradigm to the mind and to money and to what we're, creating and making as humans. And I think in this vision of a paradigm shift that spoke to me like very early on in my studies and in my life even, is just recognizing that we're not that we're kind of in this like Anthropocene era where we're centering ourselves and focusing on ourselves, but there isn't any way that it can just, we're not living in a vacuum. Like, we live on an earth that is alive and sentient. And I think that that's kind of what I see for the vision of our future, is recognizing that sentience and coming into relationship with it, like coming back into wholeness with, the sentience of the earth through our own kind of sentience. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, because that's, I mean, of course, there's a lot of people that have talked about this. It's like, understanding that everything is a living being, right? And we are, and it is, and there's this breathing Gaia. It's this energy, this spirit, really, a being. And the more we can recognize this, the more that we can actually like communicate and live in, develop a different relationship than we've had, which has been this kind of disconnected relationship. Like you said, it's like, what are all the things we could extract and buy and produce and throw in landfills, like, etc. And I'm curious, you've done a lot of the dieta work and work with ayahuasca and of course psilocybin, but I would say there's nothing like a dieta, like deep work down in the jungle, or really in these kind of environments where it's like, there's nothing there except you and the earth and some medicine. It's like for an extended period. What have you found, or what do you believe that the medicine is doing to help contribute, if anything? Or maybe it's just medicine, that's that, and people are just tripping and what are your views on, I always ask, like, do you believe that these plant medicines and psychedelics are, growing in popularity for a reason? Do you believe that they're going to continue to grow? Like, why now? Can they help us? Like, essentially, I've asked people, like, do you think these medicines will help us save the planet? I mean, I don't know. What are your views on that? Like, what have you gotten, especially, like, if anything's come through the medicine?
Yeah, it was, I mean, that was my first journey with ayahuasca, my first ceremony with ayahuasca. I really felt the earth like speaking to me and through me, and it was this very intense, very visceral experience. And that has really continued as I've dieted with plants. And I would say that, my world is like, I am kind of biased maybe because I'm like deep in this world of plant medicine work. And so I don't have the bigger vision of like what's happening collectively. But obviously, even the state of Colorado just legalized psilocybin and other natural medicines for therapeutic use. Yeah, I think that there's just no question that these medicines are here kind of as representatives of the earth, if you will. It's amazing how, we can actually start to communicate with a plant spirit. And I think that their communication has so clearly, at least for me, it's so clearly been like, yeah, cleaning the diet, cleaning the mind. That's part of the dieta process, is like really clearing yourself out, and then feeling how much more clear and how much more alive and how much more like vital you feel, having all the nonsense cleared out. I shouldn't say nonsense, but this kind of human world that we really get caught in. And yeah, so yes, to answer your question, like I think that there's no doubt in my mind that these plants are definitely doing some big work. And I've seen it in so many instances of people, coming into ceremony and being like, yeah, I used to be addicted to this and addicted to that, and now I like, even in my dietas, like at home dieta spaces that I've been involved in, it's like people come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm eating vegetables, and I'm like, my diet is so different, and I'm recognizing how much I need to really clean up my diet now. And so yeah, there's so much that comes through. I think that the medicine, it's almost like hard. Like I'm sure that there are people out there who don't have that kind of connection when they sit with the plants, but I'm like, it's hard for me to believe that you would be working with these medicines in an intentional way and not experience some sort of like awareness of the earth's intelligence, and an awareness of just like feeling that call to come back to a more natural way of living.
Yeah, I know. I always wonder, I'm like, I'm sure there's people out there that don't have these kind of experiences, but for me, it's been a lot. There's been a lot of messages, and kind of just this knowing. It's like this. Someone I interviewed once called it like truthiness. It's like this feeling where you just know in your cells that like, oh yeah, this is a spirit speaking to me and communicating as a representative for this planet, and giving very direct messages of how to change things, how to live like one by one. And it's like I've told this story to some people before about how there was a few years where like on and off the medicine kept telling me to quit eating packaged foods. And it's funny because I really wasn't eating that many packaged foods to begin with. Like for many years I've been eating like pretty clean, just like whole foods, like whole vegetables, whole meats. And I was like, packaged foods, but I don't know, an occasional, like granola bar or something. But it's like these messages come through, even like, okay, when you turn on the water faucet, like, are you aware of how the water is coming out? Are you aware of how abundant it is and how much you're wasting? Like little things that maybe aren't going to save the entire planet by themselves. But if every single human being started to wake up and have a different relationship with these, like, for example, water, like a natural resource, these things that we take for so many, and I say we, like as humans, like a lot of humans take this for granted. But if we have more of a presence and an awareness, like, wow, this is a precious natural resource that is abundant right now, but it's possible that it might not be. So how do we live in relationship with these, even the plant medicines, like how do we get into balance with this medicine that we don't, some people don't even know where it comes from and who makes it. And I've sat with people who didn't even know what it was made from. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. But to even just have more of a presence around, our earth as a provider and as an ally for us, it's so important. And yeah, I do believe that these medicines are here gaining popularity more and more every day during these times that we're in. And I'm curious, speaking of dietas, what has been your favorite plant to diet and why? I'm curious to hear about your experience with dietas. And I know we've dieted, I think, some of the same plants, right?
That's a hard question to pick a
Yeah.
favorite. It really is. Um,
Or what was the most powerful one?
they've all been so. I would say that the most powerful one was I went to Peru earlier this year in April and sat with my first tree. So
Mhm.
Bobansana is a tree, but a little bit different kind of a tree, right?
Like
So
a bushy tree.
yeah, yeah. um, and so I worked with a tree called Tawari, and
Mm,
it was
wow.
just, I mean, I love trees. I've always like just really connected with trees, and they're so strong and so, and the curandera who was facilitating just kept saying like, it's like an upright energy, like you're kind of straight in your being and you're finding this like really solid core. And so yeah, dieting tree, dieting tawari, and I'm sure I'll diet more trees in the future. That was one of the most powerful ones. But I also recently dieted rose and turmeric this year at home, and
Mm.
it was really lovely to diet with rose because she grows wild almost everywhere, but especially here in Colorado, I found so much wild rose, and that was the first time I got to meet the plant that I was dieting while I was dieting in the wild. So that was really exciting. And then turmeric was really beautiful too because it's a spice that almost everyone interacts with at some point, and I felt like having that awareness of this, like, it's kind of like you have a relationship even if you're not intentional about it, like you still you know this spice pretty well, and then wow, like dieting and the spirit of that plant, like, oh my gosh, was so powerful, was so amazing. So yeah, yeah,
That'd be
and
a good one.
yeah,
Turmeric.
it was
Were you, were
awesome.
you were you like hot for was it of 2 weeks or 3 weeks? It
um
always makes me like warm.
Yeah, I dieted for 7 days, so
Oh
just
wow.
drinking the medicine for 7 days. But yeah, it's definitely warming, which was nice because it was the fall, so it was pretty cold, and
Yeah.
it was nice. Yeah.
Oh my
Um,
God.
mhm.
Wow. Yeah, I mean it is amazing to just work with plants that are readily available, like right outside of our door. That was one thing, I helped co-lead this Rose Dieta recently, and it was the same thing where it's like it grows everywhere. It's not, indigenous to just one place and one kind of person, because there's a lot of arguments over that, which I have many views on that, again, like we are here on this earth together and there's plants readily available. And yeah, you can go diet an oak tree out in your yard, Obviously, like don't just start drinking oak unless you know what you're doing. But that's so beautiful. The trees and the strength that they give, right? I think that's what it's I actually know that tree because I've been there and seen them, but I've never dieted it, and I don't remember if the person I work with even offers it. But does it make you like really kind of like body strong and like strong, like spiritually strong strength?
Yeah, I definitely felt, I just, it's been a challenge for me, like being connected to my core. And while I was in that
Mm.
dieta, I was also in a mentorship with my plant spirit mentor. And so we were working really a lot on a pattern of dissociation and like leaving my
Mm.
body. And that tree, I think, really helped to kind of just teach me how to like
Mm.
ground, how to stay in my energy, how
Mm.
to bring it back, and yeah, and find those deeper roots. And also, I remember when I was leaving Peru, it was just a few days after the dieta ended, and so you're still kind of like really open, and it's very intense to like go fly and be in airports and be around all those people. Um, and at one point I started to kind of get activated and triggered, and I felt the tree just come in, and she just like just like blew up my energy field so that I was like filling up my space, and just felt really like protected and strong that way. So I mean, it's amazing. These plants are so
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it. And they stick with you, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's I don't know about you, but it's one of my favorite experiences where it's just like I can call on the spirit of this plant and just like all of a sudden they come back, and sometimes randomly just out of the blue. It's like, "Oh, I feel you. There you are." Like connected to me forever and ever. Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. So tell us a little bit about what it is that you offer now and, how that came about and, through this journey. I've watched you and I think I've left you some messages over the years where I'm like, whatever you do, don't quit. Because it's so easy. Even myself, I'm always very honest. Like it's so easy as an entrepreneur to just get into these modes of like, oh my God, this is so hard. Do I quit? Like, it's like the waves are so up and down sometimes. And the one piece of advice I say to everybody, it's like if it's in your heart, like just keep going. It's like ride the waves, stick with it, like really just keep showing up. And you've totally done that. And it makes me so happy because it's like I really believe like when people show up for their soul's purpose and their path, like there's going to be people showing up back, and there's that divine timing piece. It's like, okay, for some people it takes off really fast, and for some people it takes off slow, and for some, like me, I was kind of like sustained, like kind of like I wasn't huge fast, but it's been like, okay, I'm just gonna keep trusting and keep showing up and keep growing. But yeah, like tell us about this journey, and then how'd you come up with what it is you offer now?
Yeah. Yeah, it is such a wild ride. Like my plant spirit mentor says, business is the personal development that you never signed up for. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel that very deeply. Yeah, it's been interesting because, my journey has just been like, I think after the mastermind, I actually just kind of went on a deep, journey with studying, dieting plants and just doing more kind of personal work. And just looking back on that, I'm like, I recognize you know the necessity of that. I think that um, feeling strong in ourselves is that energy that we're putting out there in the world. But yeah, the program that I have now, I think I spoke to it a little bit before, is 4 month program. It's called Revived Life, and that's because I really feel and I see the vision of this program as like this is sort of like a life cycle. It's almost like a reconnecting with the earth through the cycle of, yes, the wheel, but the wheel is a representation of the grander cycle of life. And so just kind of healing that, the sort of like holistic aspect of being through, the physical, through the mental, through the emotional, and through the spiritual. And I'm like, oh, it's like this big, broad and also deep thing, but at the same time, it can be, the practices of it, of like cultivating a relationship with the earth, can be this kind of very simple way of starting to show up in life a little differently. And how then that practice of cultivating relationship with the earth, it manifests into every aspect of life. Like, because when we're connecting with the earth, we're connecting with our bodies. Like, we are also the earth, right? And so, just finding that support, that medicine that comes from deep within and from beyond, yeah, I'm just feeling into if there's anything else I want to speak to there. um yeah, I think that a lot of this journey for me has been, like you said, about trusting the heart, trusting the wisdom that's coming through you. And I think that that's a lot of what I see in people who are coming into my field, is like, when I'm guiding people through one-on-one sessions, being able to connect in with that wisdom in the heart. And sometimes it's like people will drop in and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how disconnected I was from myself. I didn't realize how disconnected I was from, the messages of my body, or, what my emotions are trying to tell me. And so, yeah, it's really that practice of coming back into the wisdom that is already living within you, that is already within you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so glad you're teaching this too and helping people to find the wisdom within because, and I'm constantly saying this where, everything is inside and we're all here to just help each other along this journey. And I have seen over the years, like there's a lot of people that are just outsourcing their power in so many ways to others, like, oh, well, I'll just rely on this one coach, and I'm so glad I'm a coach that's like, no, I actually am more about like how do I empower my clients to look within and like find the answers within? And I'll guide them with like here's certain like tangible things that work, but go do it your own way. Because we're all sovereign beings, and find that place within, because that's really what it is. It's like when you are deeply connected, and like you said, like really finding that center, bringing yourself in and like back here in this presence, and like grounding here on earth and connecting to this place. Like it's like we're here, whether we like it or not. And the deeper that we go down into the roots, and really like ground here on earth, and like just kind of say yes to our sacred purpose, whatever that might be now. And I do believe that it constantly shifts and changes. This is the work for humanity. And it's so interesting because I feel like, people that get spun out into depression or anxiety or grief and despair of like, oh my God, the world is going to shit. It's like, well, you can keep just walking around like that. But who does that serve? It's not, is that helping you? Is it helping anybody? I mean, really, like I noticed myself doing that a long time ago, and it kind of hit the point where I'm like, this isn't actually, it's not making anything better, and it's just making me feel worse. So then, like, this is a choice. And here's the other choice: get support, get support with someone like Margo to figure out how to actually create that, a way to be sustainably here and happy and like really thriving. I'm curious, like, yeah, the kind of people that reach out, like, what is it that they're mostly looking for? Is it that they kind of have this like awakening of like, well, I'm dissociated and I can't figure out why, or I'm depressed, or I've worked with plant medicines. Like, what is the overarching theme of most of your clients in this program?
Um, yeah, like I said, it is kind of a range. I've had people come in, wanting to focus on addiction, wanting to focus on feeling more authentic in themselves, and that was a big thing that I was focused on right when I was coming out of your program, was like this energy of like, how do we come into greater authenticity? And I think that bridges really well with the earth connection work. And I think that a lot of people don't really know, like they're not really sure. Like there's no way that I could have named like, oh yeah, I'm dissociating and I need help to like not dissociate, right? It's kind of like these energetic patterns that we keep repeating over and over, like you were saying about depression, like it can almost become a sort of addiction, right? We just have these like patterns ingrained in us, and we continue to play them out over and over without even recognizing them. And for me, like parts work has been really, really powerful in that. And I've seen it, in the people I work with. And it's just like, I think that there's so much of this process of like, God, I don't know, like kind of wanting to like shame or change or fix our parts. And when we start to actually embrace them and give them some love and some compassion, yeah, that's something that I've seen that really works well for a lot of people. And yeah.
Yeah, that's the real integration. For anyone that doesn't know, internal family systems work, which Margo has studied, is super powerful. And I do that kind of combined with all this other work that you're doing. These are the most powerful integration tools and tools for change, and transformation. I mean, almost every teacher I've had in many years has a background in it. Like it's just kind of infuses its way into everything, this parts work. And it's so important. And like you just said, it's like, I think so much of our programming in our society, it's like, even let's say someone has an addiction, or alcoholism, it's like, okay, then there's like the next spiral of shame, or embarrassment, or like just self-disgust, or disgust of others. And it's like, well, where's the space for the integration of this, the love and the acceptance, because that's what it's aching for. Even on a larger scale, I was actually shown this recently, like the earth in itself, like what's happening on earth. There's so many people that are just like pointing the finger at, okay, it's the patriarchy, or it's like, the last few thousand years of how things were run. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that's true. And are we going to just keep pointing the finger and like bashing them and, like making them feel bad? Or are we going to actually like do the work to, like where's the change? And I was shown it's like through the integration of it. It's like, okay, there's a forgiveness, there's learning, there's love, there's compassion. But the more we try to push away, the more it just keeps like fighting to be seen, And I'm sure, is that what you find when like it happens with addiction? I mean, addiction is an energy that thankfully I don't know, except a little addiction to kick out. But I've been very blessed without an addictive personality, which is amazing because I've done so many substances my whole life. And I've just never had that feeling. But I wonder, like, what do you find that energy is that keeps people like addicted, and how to get beyond that?
Yeah. I mean, it's such a like deep conversation and multifaceted and, interwoven into somebody's own personal experience. But I'm glad that you asked that because one of the things that really came through your program was that astrology reading. And he pointed to me that it was actually in my chart that I'm like, have this kind of, I don't know exactly like, where the houses and all of that, but he was saying that, I am a person who is like a deep spiritual seeker. But when you go into the sort of shadow aspect of that, it can manifest in addiction, which of course I didn't know as a young person, right? That I was actually exploring these mind altering substances as a way of, a kind of a backwards way of exploring spirituality and trying to, find my spiritual connection. And so when he said that to me, it was like this huge light bulb went off and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've been like seeking, and it made so much sense because at that time when I joined the program, it was when I had discovered, shamanic practice and my spiritual practice was starting to blossom. And I was like, oh, it makes so much sense because I'm like wanting that ritual. Like I'm wanting that like, yeah. And I think addiction itself becomes like sort of a ritualistic practice that we're not intentionally aware of that aspect of it. So yeah, that's one interesting facet of it. And of course it goes, deeper and
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can just replace it with a different kind of ritual that's maybe a little self-serving,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think there's also of course the element of distraction, of just not wanting to feel what's there to be felt.
Yeah.
Which is hard. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the root of all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like so much of that in our society. It's like, well, the addiction to the internet, the addiction to social media, the addiction to shopping, TV, and Netflix. It's like, okay, who's just trying to avoid feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so prevalent, and I think this is my prayer with these medicines is that they wake people up to that feeling, to the deeper connection within themselves, and the connection with earth, and the connection to spirit. And I think this work is one of the solutions, and this is kind of like, I'm so glad you said paradigm shift, because I do believe, everybody's trying to like, oh, how are we going to fix all the world's problems? But I think it has to start with each and every one of us, like one by one. It's not going to be this 3D printing something and hoping it fixes the environment. It's, like it has to come from within and have these bigger paradigm shifts. So I'm so glad you're doing this work. Amazing. Well, tell people a little bit about what you have coming up, where people can find you. We'll also have your links right here in the show notes too.
Yeah, thank you. The program that I'm offering right now, the Revived Life, is sort of on a rolling basis, and I'm also doing a little solstice. I call it a seasonal activation. So I'm going to be doing these every solstice and equinox to kind of just get into the energy of, as we're moving into winter in the Northern Hemisphere, like, what is that all about? What are the qualities? What's the energy? What's the essence of winter? And how can we drop into that and find a place of like nourishment from, a season that probably a lot of people are like maybe dreading in a way. So that's coming up on December 21st. I don't know when this will air, but it will be live on my website for all the way until the spring equinox. So that's something. And I'm going to be working on some more in-person stuff around here in the Lakewood, Denver area as well. So yeah.
That's what I was hoping you would say. I'm like, I hope you still do in-person things. I remember you did what was it? It was like a group hike, kind of walk type.
Actually, I haven't done that yet, but that is something I want to do.
Oh.
But I've done more kind of just like out in the in a park, like a local park by my house.
That's what
sit and, just kind of sit and connect with land. But hiking is the next thing. I'm like, I want to do like intentional walks where we're making offerings to different places and just
Ooh, beautiful. Oh my God. Margo, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so glad you're doing this work, and keep going and stick with it. And it's just, I mean, this is it. My friend and I were just talking the other day, and she's like, I just think 2025 is going to be wild. And I'm like, but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But we do feel the intensity of major shifts and changes. And even if, it's like, what does that mean, wild? Like, what hasn't been wild for at least 4 or 5 years now? But this is it. We need one another. We need people like you holding each other through this. And, I always say, I don't know how people are getting by in this world without support. So please, if you're listening, if you are struggling with, addiction or need some spiritual support and want to really heal, this is the true healing, is connecting in this way, please reach out to Margo. I cannot recommend her enough. I am so honored to have you here, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Beth. I so appreciate your continued support and encouragement. It means so much, and thank you for all the work you're putting out there in this beautiful platform.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to all the plants.